I shouldn't have to do this. I'm just going to call this video It's a Wonderful Life and try and give you a synopsis and a few bits and bobs of info that I think are very relevant not only to my family but a wider public. I'm not being grandiose or anything like that, of which I'll come on to later. There's just certain shenanigans going on that are not necessary, and I'm the victim of a lot of it, as well as my wife and children. I guess I'm not the only one in such a position in this kind of a scenario, which I will come on to. Excuse me for referring to paper. I've just got bullet points here which I'm going to try and elaborate on. Okay, so I'm having a bad time of it. I'm an ex-soldier from the UK. I served in Africa and the Middle East as part of the first Gulf operations back in 90 and 91 on Desert Shield and also Op Haven with Royal Marine Commando, which all come under the umbrella for UK forces known as Op Granby. Spent time in Africa, Central America, Europe, various other bits and bobs. The Cold War was going on and the troubles in Northern Ireland and all that. Ever since landing at Thumrait in Oman in August 1990, about a week after Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, my health hasn't been good since. I haven't even had 8 hours sleep in one night since then, maybe about 3 times since then, in 30 years nearly. Anyway, my health has been poor. Prior to that, prior to the Gulf Ops, I was fit as a fiddle. I could keep up with the Super SIGs. When I dropped from Namibia on my A1 at Catterick, I could hear the Super SIGs behind me saying, "Who the bloody hell's that?" on a run or two. And you know, I was quite well respected in many ways, even though many thought I was a gobshite. But I was well respected for being fit, quite a decent tradesperson as well, a decent soldier to a certain extent, and still had the balls to tell me where to get off if need be. But you know, it wasn't for everyone's liking. You know, that kind of character doesn't cut it for everyone. But yeah, I did my best as could. The thing is with UK soldiers is they are quite often misunderstood. When I arrived at Catterick Garrison for the first time and seen all the food that was on offer, having grew up in the poorest of regions of Manchester, I stood there shocked, and the army catering call were there smiling, saying, "Oh no, not all the skinny rump from the inner cities." But you know, I met many an ex-soldier many a soldier when I joined my working unit who came from a similar background to me, and all you want to do is do your best and stand up and be counted. I met many a soldier who didn't know who their mum and dad was, who had been put up for adoption, and for that tried it even harder to be someone of standing, and in my eyes always were. And you are a kind of brotherhood, a sisterhood of forces personnel, quite often people who are run out of their own communities or ridiculed in some way or put down for the potential they have. In the UK Armed Forces there is a wealth of potential for teachers and doctors and nurses, researchers, architects, barristers, scientists, musicians, writers, directors. There's a whole host of potential, but because they are often from the poorest of communities, they would rather, or government would rather, brutalise them and then buy in when they need fresh intellects that buy in from third world countries. It's what you call the brain drain. They pinch the cream of the crop there, it keeps the poor countries down, and it insists they treat their own like shit. So they've always got a labour force and cannon fodder on board from their own society. But because they don't invest in the working communities or the working class people, were brutalised, something that was noted by Rousseau back in the 17th century, who said the urban working classes were not naturally harsh and brutish, but rather the upper echelons of society had made them that way, and that's often the case. And you get many an ex-soldier, you know, turn around and give prophecies about the way society's going. And when those prophecies come true, they don't turn around and say, I told you so. They just think, they never listen. They never listen. So that's a bit of a background info. When I came back from the Middle East and I eventually left the military, I then secured a position working for the United Nations in the Balkans, UNPROFOR. I came back from there, and by then my life was in a mess physically and mentally. I was destroyed. Physically from service in the Gulf, and mentally the whole lot. From working with the UN to time in the Middle East and all the rest of it, I was a mess. I lashed out against a woman that I loved, and it resulted and culminated in me committing negligent arson to her home, which was a drunken kind of meanderings which possibly wouldn't have happened had not the suggestions and prompting and disturbance happened in the military and beyond. But you know, you're wiser with hindsight. You don't necessarily understand this when you're going through it. All you know is when you're coming across refugees who are children, one soldier looks the same as any other when they're wearing DPM material or combats and they're carrying a rifle. And that's what screws with the majority of soldiers' heads. They can deal with the fight or flight and all the rest of it, but when it comes to children in warfare, they end up traumatised by what they witness. And it does pull at your intellect when you realise that, you know, soldiering, it doesn't matter what banner you're under, what flag you're waving, what anthem you're singing. If you're a child and you're caught in a war zone, you look pretty much the same as each other. And that's what plays with your intellect. And I came back in total turmoil for stomping around the Bondu and the planet for 7-8 years, thinking I was doing something decent, and then coming across the refugees in Kurdistan, it just made me zero myself into what the world is making of people. Now here I am, I'm wise with all of this, and I've had a fight with my wife, and it's after 12 years, and constantly throughout our 12 years of marriage, we've been prodded and probed and provoked into reactions. Down where we originated from, down in the borough of Rochdale, Haywood and Greater Manchester, North Manchester, not the politest place around, we received kind of racial problems because we're a multiracial couple. She's a Zulu woman from South Africa, and I'm a Heinz variety from Northern Europe. We received racial kind of harassment, but it was very low-key, low level. The worst people for the harassment were the agencies, the social services, the mental ill health wallers. Not always the nurses, but those high up who are keen for you to come under their control regime. Now, social services, even my wife Lungi got really cheesed off with social services down in Haywood. And she said to one of the social services worker, Deborah Moore, she pressed them on occasion, "Why are you treating Michael this way? Why is it all you want to do is force pills on him when they are clearly not needed? He's functioning okay, but you're giving him a hard time." The social worker Deborah Moore turned around to my wife, who on this occasion was pushing, who's considerably younger, but has so much integrity about her. She knocks the spots off many a woman, despite being younger than me, considerably younger. She pressed for answers. "Why are you treating Michael this way?" To which Deborah Moore said, "Are you well, Lungi? I don't think you're very well." That was in our home, and what I understand it as was a veiled threat that if she persists her line of inquiry, Deborah Moore will have her sectioned. They're very good at that in these inner city areas. If you have an intellect that they feel threatened by, they're more inclined to section you than emulate any positive possibilities and potential you have. Because in those areas they find an intellect a threat. Because the intellect is naturally going to understand it's wrong, the way we are forced to live and what we are forced to accept. Now, since the military, since the Gulf and all the rest of it, and the UN, the Balkans and all that, they've been monitoring me and they've been shitting on me something rotten. Now, I've got a decent enough intellect. It's been going on ever since I was a kid, where I've been targeted for abuse by teachers as well as pupils. In fact, certain teachers at Darnell School, Mrs. McClure in particular, one of them, they signposted to the other pupils to commit abuse upon me by the fact she took me out and humiliated me and committed abuse upon me in front of the whole lot of them. Now that told me a great deal even back then, that she shouldn't have had the position of responsibility as teacher. She said, oh, it's just a joke. But it wasn't. Every man and his dog, or every child there, was queuing up to have a fight after what she did. I was going to Darnell Boxing Club, but they'd already had me fight my brother because they didn't know we were brothers. And they were queuing up. And there were certain children taken out of that school because they went home disturbed about what was happening to me. If you want names, Thomas Shaw, for one, who tried his damnedest to stop the beatings upon me. And then there is Alan Haywood, I think, and David Haywood. They were taken out again because, the abuse when I turned up from Crossley Primary in Blakely, when I turned up at Darnell, the teachers, everyone was complicit and there was no questions asked. If somebody made allegation against me, Mrs. McClure took me to the head teacher, Mr. Cathcart, who put it upon himself to put me over his knee and spank my buttocks. Something I was used to from having wire hangers placed upon them by my own mother. I used to receive beatings from my mother from a very early age, or locked in a pantry, where she would be outside saying, Mr. Colgos is going to get you. After about 15-20 times of that, I began to stop crying and screaming, instead looking for the cars and the little toys that I used to have that she used to throw in there when she wanted to abuse me in some way. And she would use wire hangers to whip me across the buttocks. Later on in life, when I came out the army, she said, oh, I'm sorry, Michael, I had male hate, but she didn't. Because she didn't do it to Simon, she just did it to me. I had 2 stepsisters and still have 2 stepsisters. Don't refer to them as stepsisters, they are my sisters, Susan and Jackie. And I can remember occasions we were paraded in the bedroom and whipped with a belt. And I'd be stood there crying my eyes out. There's a 7-year-old boy, because I was witnessing what was happening to the younger children. I was the eldest at 7. On one occasion, my sister Susan there, and every time she put her hand over her buttocks to stop the belt hitting her, they'd say to her, you get one more every time you put your hand over your buttocks. And I'm stood there as a 7-year-old boy saying, Susan, don't put your hand over your buttocks, because I didn't want her to get any more whips. And my mother would be turning to me, what are you crying for? You've not had yours yet. You've not had yours yet. I wasn't the best of older brothers. It could have been a lot worse, perhaps if I wasn't around, I don't know. You have to understand the violence I had been through very early on. The foster homes, the adoption centres, all the rest of it. I didn't have the best start in life myself. Nevertheless, we did get on, but whenever mother and father were away, and they were out in the lash, we would sometimes meet each other on the stairs, sneaking downstairs to get a dripping butty, warming the lard up in a chip pan, dip a bit of bread in, bit of salt, and then we'd back up to bed where they'd pour us before they'd go out in the lash. But, in the age of 6, I was at the top of the chess ladder in Crossley. I went all the way from the bottom, challenging folk, or other pupils, till I got to the top and ended up on the chess team. Because of the violence I suffered though, I'm there in the chess competition, I'm under threat from 2 rooks, and at the age of 6, 7 I sat there and peed because I didn't have the strength to put my hand up and say, I need the toilet. So I had this intellect, but because of the abuse and the violence, my social skills were poor. Which was made even worse at Darnell, when the teacher deliberately went out of her way to humiliate me, so signalling the rest of the class to abuse me as well. On the backside of that, secondary school, one time, in the biology class, I spent several months with the nearest human to me was a fetus in a jar. An abortion. Because they wanted to punish me for copying somebody's book. Somebody's work in a book, but what he was doing was copying the blackboard. And rather than me turning around every 2 minutes, I just thought, I'll copy from his book. It's on the board anyway. The next minute I'm being isolated and put in a table on my own where for several months I'd be looking across at the fetus in the jar, and that'd be my nearest human in that class. So this is the background I had in one of the poorest communities going. I used to go to school with big clumps of masking tape around shoes that were talking. Alien TV must have thought, oh, that's quaint. Isn't that quaint, eh? Isn't, oh. But here I am, after the Gulf and leaving the military and all that. I had the breakdown of my first marriage because of PTSD, stroke and heart attack. Not long after, my first wife, Louise, became pregnant with Fabian. I mean, it's almost as if they waited. They kind of said, right, well, you can have a stroke and heart attack. That way you can't work. So I had a stroke and heart attack which took half my vision. So all this in my right eye, in both eyes, and my right side is blind. I can't drive, can't work, I've got the PTSD, I've got a heart attack, I've got the stroke. If I move my head, I can still feel where the aneurysm happened in my brain to this day, and that was in 1998 it happened. They gave me a shot of morphine that didn't even touch the sides. So that was basically the end of the first marriage. Before even we were married, before even Fabian was born, they decided to crucify me there and then with stroke and heart attack, and then have years and years of PTSD backed up come and say hello to me. After trying to fight to see my son Fabian for 2 years through the courts, of which they did nothing more than laugh at me, I removed myself from West Yorkshire back to Manchester, where I eventually met my wife of present Norman Gallo. From day one, it's been fraught with harassment and problems. They didn't even want us to stay together. They didn't want us to meet. They were trying to stop us from meeting. Nevertheless, we met and we floated each other's boat kind of thing, and we got together, and they have been harassing us and probing us and poking us from afar. In fact, when we were undergoing racial harassment in Haywood, I thought, that's it. Get a flight to South Africa, take Wyatt, who was our firstborn, take him with you for a holiday, and I'm going to close the house here and look for somewhere new to live. In the processes of doing that, as we were going to the airport, the taxi was stopped by 2 police vans. 11 armed officers got out with semi-automatic rifles after what looked like some kind of anti-terrorist swoop. And, they came and swooped on me in this taxi, in the passenger seat, the Asian taxi driver by my side, and my wife in the back with Wyatt sat on her lap. How the hell they could justify 11 armed officers with semi-automatic weapons piling out of 2 vans that did the old stop manoeuvre, in front and behind the vehicle, I don't know. They then arrested me, saying I made threats to kill her, which I didn't. And then it materialised several months later that my mother said that I'd made threats to kill. She's a town councillor and not a prime minister. I'm not fucking the jackal. She's not Charles de Gaulle, but she made threats she made a claim that I made threats to kill her. I was going to kill her apparently with a rifle while she was to make a speech on the Memorial Gardens in Haywood, Greater Manchester. 11 armed officers for a man, unarmed, and his wife in the back with Wyatt sat on her knee. They took me to the police station. You could see several police officers kind of intrigued by this, wondering what the bloody hell's going on. And they're the ones I do feel for, because it's like the police are split between those with hidden agendas and those that genuinely want to serve the community and do honest policing, if there is such a thing left. Anyway, my wife went to the airport. They sent her to South Africa with Wyatt, and I spent time. They then took me to a kind of psychiatric institute, and after 2 weeks they let me go. They put me down as a section 3, and then after 2 weeks they just all of a sudden said, right, you can go. Normally before then, if I ever feel, because of my PTSD issues, that I'm under risk or I'm scared, I normally present myself to the services to say I'm struggling at the moment. I've never needed a section because I'm not running around the Bondu with weapons or all the rest of it. But they felt the need to have 11 armed officers for me, my wife and Wyatt. When my wife returned from South Africa, we ended up still in the same place because I didn't have a chance to close it down. Every time I left the house for 6 months, 7-8 months after that incident, my son Wyatt would be crying at the door. And he never used to do that prior to that incident, where he witnessed as a 1-2-year-old boy me being put against the wall by 11 armed officers. Here I am in Scotland, having been, because we moved to North Yorkshire from there, and from North Yorkshire to here. But in North Yorkshire, we were in a village called Gargrave, overlooked by an installation called Sister Jennings. Sister Jennings are formerly Johnson & Johnson. And I began to notice in that village that there was a high incidence of ill health in children in the village overlooked by Sister Jennings. So I began to start kind of look more deeply into what was happening in the community while making a noise. My own son too came down with a condition they called molluscum contagiosum. This wasn't around when I was a kid. And we used to go from North Manchester on the coach, for a day trip to Blackpool, and we used to swim with the jobbies floating on the top of the sea before the beaches were cleaned, and we never used to come out with all these conditions. Yeah? Now you got this new condition called molluscum contagiosum, as well as other new conditions. And what it does is it gives a rash-like problem to children. And they say, there's no problem with it. So I read up on it on the NHS website. The initial write-up on the NHS website, it contradicted itself. It's like they were covering all bases. It's not a problem at the beginning, by the end it can be a problem. It's not painful at the beginning, by the end it can have severe effects. Etc, etc. They made sure they covered all bases. And I thought, that's a bit bogus that, because they're contradicting themselves in what they're saying in the write-up. And I got off about that and they changed it. That's the NHS official website on molluscum contagiosum. Then I began to look more into the community. Now the village of Gargrave has a school of which Wyatt and Sahara went to. Once a week a man would go into that school to entertain the children. 3, 4, 5 boxes, big boxes, plastic boxes of toys. And they'd perform and they'd have to sit down and play with the toys in these plastic boxes. And it twigged with me what was going on. You had a certain amount of handshaking between Gargrave, school, North Yorkshire County Council, the church and Sister Jennings. What that Oppo was doing was going in with toys that were smeared with detriment by the lab techs at Sister Jennings. And what that does is the children play with the toys, it transfers the viruses and the problems, or the viruses and conditions that they suffer. And the reason they do it through the toys is, one, it maintains anonymity of the lab techs, while two, it enables research at a kind of objective level of how viruses are transmitted, not only from the toys to the children, but between the children themselves. In my son's class alone, on one occasion, there were 4 children with different conditions, one of whom had to have 8 months of treatment, otherwise would have lost his kidneys. I then noted the registration plate of the vehicle and passed it on to CID. I'm little people, I'm not in power or anything like that. I've got no power. I can't do the research myself for the simple reason I'm out of service. I can't make inquiries as to the registration plate of the man that used to go into the school with the boxes of toys. It would have been interesting to know whether that registration plate belonged to an Oppo that had links with either North Yorkshire County Council, the NHS, Sister Jennings or the church. I say the church in the area because the church was going into the school once a week, and every now and then see the vicar clutching jars of whatever and going into the school. And when I started to make a noise about what was going on, there were poppies ripped up outside the school, and on one occasion a balloon left on the fence, an orange balloon saying "I love Derry." The next minute the vicar sods off to Northern Ireland when I'm making a noise about the high incidence of ill health. And then I realised something so disgusting. It's difficult to kind of relate to. What I can gather about many of these new conditions, given what I know now, is that these children are being interfered with in such a way for paedophiles to dine out on their anguish from afar, from remote areas, or from a remote place. In other words, they're away, but they're tuning into the children psychically. Now, some of you might be saying, oh, that's hokum. But to give you an indication that this does happen, you consider what hysteria is. It enables, say, a chant at a football pitch to emanate from everyone at once for the initial word. Hysteria jumps from person to person at a psychic level. Okay? They understand that now. It catches psychically. It kind of leaps from people. The word mesmerize comes from the German scientist Mesmer. Now, he's famous for his work in animal attraction, but he was also conducting experiments which he was thrown out of countries for, where he was he was remotely controlling people. He was actually what you call channeling people. This was towards the end of the 1800s. He was channeling people, and he would demonstrate to other health professionals of the time being able to get someone from the next village to walk to his house and knock on the door. And he did it without modern communications. And he was, like many others of the day, called a witch and all the rest of it and banned from practicing. He was called Mesmer. And that's where the word mesmerised comes from. Mesmerised being a trance-like state. Now when you consider pills like ecstasy as well, that heighten the psychic capabilities of ESP, you know from research that there has been whole clubs on ecstasy where they've experienced things such as orgasms simultaneously while dancing. It enables people to kind of let go of inhibitions more and meet each other at a psychic level. Ecstasy was invented by the Swedes in the 50s. It even has something prior to that. But this day and age, it heightens the potential for psychic awareness. Now, some of these new conditions that are materialising are very insincere, snide and bogus. Molluscum contagiosum was not around when I was a kid, but you can bet your bottom dollar they'll probably have Men in Black technology writing up histories of it for you to believe in. They weren't around when I was a kid. Now you've got the village of Gargrave with kids coming down left, right and centre with this, that and the other. Now there are conditions being invented for Big Pharma to claim money from with the medicines. And if you note, they never provide cures these days, it's always treatments. Lo and behold, Johnson & Johnson themselves have just spouted up and said, you would be pleased to know we've invented a depot injection to treat AIDS and HIV. So you no longer take oral medication. Give us a big thank you. And be like, oh, thank you, thank you. The thing is with AIDS and HIV and all, that's a manufactured condition. And they don't want you to know that it's not just affecting humans. The animal kingdom of Africa and the tropics are coming down with something similar. And it's not all down to sex. Do you really think they're having more sex in sub-Saharan Africa than here? In the tropical regions, are they having more sex than here? So why is it that back in the 1980s, 70% of Malindi in Kenya alone had AIDS and HIV, be you young or medium age or old age? Why is it they turned around and said that the animal kingdom will reduce around these regions to 15% of their current numbers? That's in lion and elephant and all the rest. It's because the transmission of AIDS and HIV in those regions is not just through blood from sex, if that happens, it's from the mosquito. If you look out, the mosquito stays at the temperature of the air. Now in tropical states, that temperature is around the 30 to 40 degree mark often on a daily basis, Celsius, which is very close to the human body. When a mosquito lands on you, it vomits, it puts its proboscis in you, it vomits the remains of its last victim into your bloodstream and then sucks up your blood. as fresh food, and then it moves on to the next victim. It vomits your blood into their bloodstream and then sucks up the new food. Now, if that temperature is kept, the human body temperature is kept because of the air, being similar, is kept constantly around 37, then the AIDS HIV virus is going to survive in the mosquito, who then vomits that blood into the next person. Now, they don't want you to know this because it's a global catastrophe, but that in essence is what's going on. Meanwhile, the corporates are making a vast amount of money out of treatments, not cures, but treatments. Now, if you're thinking that, oh yeah, it kind of rings true that. You're thinking that they're not man-made. There are, because of global warming, there are now corpses that emerge in the Himalayas, Siberia, the Siberian tundras and all the rest of it, that have been frozen for over 1,000 years. And they've taken DNA and genetic samples of these corpses, and they don't have things such as cancer genes, which modern humans have. To have cancer, you must have a cancer gene in you. Now, these corpses of old, 1,000 years ago, they don't have that cancer gene. So what they have in essence been doing is laying down the train tracks in your bioform to have any carriage they want placed upon. AIDS, HIV, cancer, etc., etc. And then making a mountain of money out of it. Now, I know an awful lot about what's going on in this world. I even understand we are not Darwinian, we are not biblical, we are an alien hybrid engineering. Now, the doctors are saying we are expressing DNA and genetics which are not of this world. The same part of it is not of this world. And that's because we are an alien hybrid. Now, funnily enough, as more and more people around the world are shouting out saying, hang on, there's something snide going on. The human race is being insulted. The humanoids here are being insulted. You've got CERN fired up day and night, 24 hours a day, working to develop what? It's supposed to be a research tool, isn't it? This installation, CERN, the Large Hadron Collider underneath Switzerland and France. It's supposed to be a research installation. So why is it fired up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? Why is it hard sabotage? Not accident, but sabotage. And why are there sinkholes appearing in frequency around the world? Why have they started to be recorded since the Large Hadron Collider was switched on? What I understand is they're working out the exit port from the entry port. The entry port is CERN. If they can develop an exit port around the world, then they'll test subjects to go through before going to the nearby universe. Because our alien engineers on this planet, which is now Frankenstein's playground, they've been seen. And they want to get away. And they're developing Stargate to bug out. Why have the sinkholes appeared around the globe in frequency since the Large Hadron Collider was switched on? Why are there so many new conditions, and why is the British nursing formula, why is it now that thick where years ago it was that thick? Why are doctors being told to consult the computer rather than practice being a doctor? Why are the NHS staff, why are the nurses at ground level, the Indians doing the work, at loggerheads with their peers, the doctors, the consultants? Why is it the nurses can only give you a hint? They can see something on those scans, but you'll have to wait for the consultant to write to you with the results, who always say, we can see nothing. That's because you've got implantable medical devices in your system, in your bioform, which are not only looking and doing research on you, but on your partner too. Those IMDs, implantable medical devices, coupled with surveillance of your home, enable them to gauge what you're all about, what your partner's all about. And the nurses are up in arms and want to claim back the NHS because they've lost it. You can't turn around and say you're going into nursing now and then get there and finish training and say you're still doing it from an ethical high ground anymore. Money. Money is killing everything of value. A health service invented by Nye Bevan for poor communities has been taken to court by Richard Branson. Richard Branson, once a kind of enigmatic character, a champion of coming from rags to riches, has become just like everyone else where money is concerned now. He's let the side down. Now, a capitalist, his hunger is never satiated, wants more and more and more. Now here he is taking an organisation which was originated from the poorest of communities, he's taken it to court, and he succeeded in gaining win. But the NHS itself are now running the show at Porton Down. So how can the NHS, with a duty of care to the nation, also have its fingers in the pie of an installation that manufactures chemical weapons? Now, I've had a fight with my wife this year because we've been prodded, poked and provoked. And the reason they've done this is because I've been gobbing off about all of this. And they got what they wanted. My wife and I had a fight after the pressure. And I ended up in the police cells. We both needed treatment at hospital. It looked more gruesome than it was, but it happened nevertheless. This is a couple that have been through hell and high tide and have stuck together because they've got the courage to do that, and the integrity and belief in one another. And they've shit all over it. They've split us up, and now they're stopping me from seeing my children. They're claiming I'm unfit to be a dad. They've even had that backed up by police reports who say I've got weapons in the home. I've got an axe for chopping wood. I've got a wood burner there. I've got a wood burner in the conservatory. Okay? And if they want to turn around and say it's a weapon in the home, you've all got potato knives. You've all got a bread knife. You've all got scissors. If you know your martial arts, you've all got credit cards most probably as well. So you've all got weapons in the home, but they're making a big song and dance about targeting me. Why do you think they're doing that? From what I can gather, Katie McKeown, who's one of the people in charge of all of this, she wants the mouth shut up and silent about what's going on. Because I've been gobbing off about all of this, as well as the fact they're now taking your children by stealth. Years ago, you used to start nursery at the age of 4. Now you start nursery at the age of 2 and you're given 30 hours a week so you can go out and work for 25% mortgage in a house of value. They've taken your children by stealth. They're profiling them, and if they've got the intellect that will challenge what is inherently wrong, they'll fuck up their intellect. I know, because they've had it done to me. Now they're using my children and they're stating I'm not a good dad. And I'm actually a child empath. And the reason for that is I've never had a childhood of my own, and part of me is a child. That's why I can understand them more than many, you know. But they're determined to shut me up, and they're using my children as a gagging tool. Now the police there, they kind of dined out on the fact that me and my wife fought. And what they've done is they came back several times to take me to the police station. One occasion, there was one of the oppos came here, one of the police. He's got 2 colleagues with him, and you could see the absolute sorrow and horror in his colleagues' eyes. I didn't know why they were so sorrowful looking at him as he took me in the back of a van to the police station in Elgin. From the back of the van in Elgin, they transferred me to the cells. They didn't really question me, they just said, we're charging you. They took me to a court the next day in a custody vehicle, which is a vehicle with cells on board. And then they left the vehicle for 5 minutes. The engine's off, nobody on board but me and somebody else, whom I didn't see because you're all in cubicles in the cells. That person was in the cell in front of me, and there he is masturbating. The whole vehicle's shaking. The whole vehicle's shaking, I can hear him clearly masturbating. This is the police treating a veteran like this because he had a fight with his wife. a fight with his wife that accrued because of the distance that they provoke and probe for with. And prior to that, me and my wife were alright. Our health improved since coming from England up to Scotland. And leaving Gargrave, overlooked by Sister Jennings, I and my children's lives got better. And then 8 months into being up here in Scotland, they started again. My wife coming down with severe pain. And then she's looking to have her passport renewed. And there were sights going up one day and down the next. I left messages at telephone numbers with so-called diplomats for the South African embassy up here in Scotland. No replies. One day I'd ring up, it was there, and the next day, ooh. And they were letting me know they were toying. So I thought, right, we've nothing to hide. Let's go to an immigration specialist. So I contacted an immigration specialist in Aberdeen. After several days they came back to me and said, if you want to renew your wife's passport, if she wants to renew her South African passport, she's to go to this address in Glasgow. Well, can I have the website, please? Can I have the telephone number so we can give them a bell and find out what, best ways to do it? No. You just go to this back street address in Glasgow and knock on the door. Now that's coming from an immigration specialist in Aberdeen. And my wife goes quiet when she's presented with these threats because she's frightened. To be honest, I am too, because I'm a veteran, I've nothing to hide. And I'm spouting out because inherently this is wrong. It's all wrong what people are being asked to accept, what they are being forced and subjugated to. Now they turn around and say I'm a suspect. I'm not. What they do is they label someone as a suspect so that they can do their intervention, so they can carry out their tapping, their surveillance. That's the way it goes. It's unfair to treat a veteran this way, and just because he's gobbing off about what's going on. I do feel this is something that is important, because people have a right to know what's going on. If you're a partnership, in a loving relationship, and you want it to work, and you want to give the gift of each other, of a child, you want to express your love for each other, give the gift of life to each other and the world, and have a child, then you have every right to know the full ins and outs of what's going on this world. Because right now, social services are not about protection. Social services are running the care homes in Nottingham and Rotherham and Ipswich and various other places that were noted for giving children to politicians for their sex parties. Now those homes are run by social services. Social services are also the organisation that went into Langley during the Thatcher years and took the kids, claiming that the parents were practising devil worshipping. Now, I am, as an ex-soldier, trying to keep hold of investing in these orgs as valid, and I can't do it no more. I see the police split between prejudiced officers with the NWO attitude and young people coming into the ranks that are horrified at what their peers are doing. And it's the same with nurses who go into the profession. I've heard them on the telephone to their peers saying, I'm sorry, I can't do that, that goes against my ethics. And they end up leaving, and there's problems with retention in such organisations because what's being asked of the new recruits who leave training is unethical. So now you get the police force split, you got the health service split. And social services themselves are qualified to me exactly what they're all about. When I and my wife were down in Gargrave in Skipton and I started to make a noise about the ill health in children, I received bogus allegations from North Yorkshire County Council and also from the local nursery where I volunteered to assist because they say they need 3 parents on the committee to keep the nursery running. So I volunteered, knowing that there are other people in the community who are working who can't give up time. The least I could do was something to give back was volunteer my services. Lo and behold, when I started making a noise about the ill health in children, bogus claims were made against me by other nursery staff. And then the leader, one Kirsty Ramsden, who's a decent woman who tried to warn me. She was approached 3-4 times to have my daughter Sahara placed on a watch list. I had no problem with Sahara or Wyatt. Neither did Kirsty Ramsden have any problem with me. She demonstrated herself most professionally as somebody in charge of the running of the nursery. She even tried to warn me by message, and then all of a sudden the text message disappeared before I read it. Now somebody approached her from the community saying that Sahara needs to be placed on a watch list. And that somebody was called Lynn. Living next door to us in Gargrave was Dave and Lynn, who said they'd left Sister Jennings on early retirement. Very quiet as they sat next door to us. And the reason being is they were carrying out research on our family. And it's funny how some of those water pipes go into your house via somebody else's house. Pipes that were relayed when I started to gob off about what was going on in the area. 3 times she approached Kirsty Ramsden. 3 times Kirsty Ramsden said, no, there's no need, until she yielded on the 4th occasion. All this is documented. I then made complaint to Jess Marquardt of North Yorkshire County Council when North Yorkshire County Council wrote a letter saying, your wife has stipulated to neighbours that you keep her locked in a room. My wife read the letter and she stood there, and again, when she gets frightened, she goes quiet, because she never said anything of the sort. Now, we've been followed and harassed for 12 years. They got what they wanted. We had a fight. It's not the first. It's not the first, because at the end of the day, couples under such duress do fight. The family law courts make a mountain of money out of it, while the couples 2 years down the line say, we've been played. I miss you. We've been played. But the elite are making a nice butty out of it, out of your woe, for how society is orchestrated. Now they've divided us, and they've got access to the children. Children that they say are not allowed to see. When I took this up with Freya Milne of Moray Council Social Services, she said to me with her partner there, Niall Lavery, I contacted North Yorkshire County Council about the high incidence of ill health in children in Gargrave, and they gave me reassurance. It was just coincidence. So that's like a sergeant of the troop, yeah? Turning round and investigating allegations made against someone, and he's asking his friendly oppos of such allegations. They're saying, nah, it's alright, sweet ass. So right there and then, Freya Milne has got no integrity in my eyes. I also know she's got contact with the security services, possibly through TA and all the rest of that. Now, I'm supposed to be a veteran, struggling to get on, who's doing the best he can. And all around, these agencies are shitting all over me and my wife. And what they're doing is they're laying down the groundwork to perhaps take the children off us. And we are loving parents. I've never hit my children. I may have raised my voice once or twice. Parents do. It's a learning process between parent and child. I think if I was a child and I had the voice raised against me by a parent, yeah, I'd be mortified to a certain degree. It's a lot better than being kicked the fuck out of and whipped with hangers and belts though, isn't it? But they want to say I'm an unfit dad. I don't do drugs. I don't do alcohol to any great degree. The only problem I have with alcohol is the fact I can't afford that much of it. By rights, with what I have been through and my wife, we should be crawling into a bottle and staying there till death. But we don't, for the simple reason we have children to consider. And then you'll get those on board and say you never take those children out. Well, that's because you struggle on the pension and benefits as a veteran. Now, we could have stayed in Manchester, North Manchester, and the rent and cost of living would have meant we'd be 500 better in the wallet. but the kids would be going to school stepping over roaches, discarded cigarette butts, glass, cans of Tennent's Super half filled, dog shit. You'd have the ghetto bird up in the air every third night, zooming in the bloody light on your roof and windows. You'd have the sirens going off 20 to 30 times a day. Every corner you'd be smelling marijuana. And then there's the Evo stick and some blessed loaf packets. Then there's the crime. Then there's the racial harassment. It costs to live in a place of decency. But when that place of decency is run by those Nazis with prejudice on board, like Freya Milne, like Katie McKeown and Niall Lavery, and it's just as bad, isn't it? Now they say Scotland's a police-run state. What are the police actually propagating? If they're running a state where the courts sit behind closed doors and make judgments outside of public scrutiny upon politicians accused of paedophilia. Is that what you are all about now, Mr. Policeman? I serve the same crown as you. The uniform may be different. I serve the same crown as you. I know exactly what goes into it. So is it your right now to turn round and write up that this man is unfit to be a dad because he's got an axe for chopping wood? You really think and have evidence to suggest I've taken that axe to my children? You have lost your integrity, along with Freya, Niall Lavery, Katie McKeown, and all the others on NWO. The only time you're interested in child protection, or the only time you're interested in children, is if they can be used to gag and shut up those that are shouting out about the injustice of what's going on. Otherwise, Freya Milne, if she really was concerned for the children of the Gargrave, she wouldn't be ringing up her brethren at North Yorkshire County Council. She'd be down in the village. She'd be asking the parents of those that have had conditions. She'd be organising a bit of a get-together one evening, perhaps 7, 8 o'clock in the evening for an hour, to discuss with the residents a high incidence of ill health in the community and asking for their feedback. But she's not. She's ringing up North Yorkshire County Council and they're giving her a big, oh, it's alright, sweet ass. We'll send you some dollar up, eh? You understand what's going on? I'm not the only veteran coming down with this kind of thing. Because what they're keen on doing is shutting up the veterans because they've got the knowledge that knows what's going on. I was a radio telegraphist. I was vetted up to top secret and my classification was A1. Now they're stopping me from seeing my children. And that coincides with the fact they've been fully aware I've got this hernia that bulges out. And they've been aware of it since September 2018. They say they're not going to operate because I've got a dodgy ticker. They've known about the dodgy ticker since February of last year. And all they've been doing is stalling, saying, oh, you need to take pills. So I've still got the hernia. I've got this dodgy ticker which could cream in at any moment. And they're stalling, and because of it I've stopped engaging with them. What they're doing is they're using these conditions and they're capitalising on the duress they're already putting on me by not allowing me to see my children while knowing full well I'm suffering pain and discomfort from the hernia and from the heart problem. I already have PTSD issues and I'm already fully aware of what's going on around the ball. You have personalities now stepping up around the ball, may as well have come out of a 1930s issue of Time magazine on the rise of fascism. People have a right to know. Because all around the world there are more children being born with behavioural disorders and congenital conditions. It's not just the Gulf veterans. And I have lost colleagues from the Gulf. Andrew Egan, who I handed the detachment to at Al Jabail. dropped down dead at the age of 44 of sudden death in front of his family. Jack Thorpe from the same troop, dead before his time. Taff Richards of the same regiment, dead before his time. I spent time in the Balkans where one of the guys there, Andrew Molyneux, dead before his time. Only UN personnel from UN Radio themselves, as well as those attached to the United Nations, are thinking to themselves it reeks of capital punishment. If you're wondering why the NHS have doctors that take 11, 12, 13, 14 years to vet, because these days they themselves can carry out executive punishment and capital punishment on denying the treatments for certain individuals. There are certain people that will say, oh, this is all circumspect. It's conjecture. And that's just it, they use clever language. Have you noticed these days, if you're a dead person, or if you know of a dead person that's at the NHS, all of a sudden you may be up for an organ harvest. Doesn't that sound a bit like autumn harvest? Autumn harvest associated with food that you've grown over the summer. Now we have organ harvest. And the NHS are using objectivity to turn around and declare themselves elite and distant from normal human. You have a miscarriage now, they'll turn around to you and say to you, what would you like us to do with the product of conception? That's NHS language for you right now. What would you like us to do with the product of conception? Product, like a tin of beans. Perhaps headphones, yeah? Shoes or sandals, a product, yeah? It's not life. It's not life. So when I was at the biology class as a kid, I was sat near a product of conception. That was the nearest human to me. A product of conception. Now, we are being peered at from behind the sun. We've got a large alien megastructure inbound. NASA have just said they can see the black hole without the need for a radio telescope now. And they are also saying you have dark matter increasing in this region of the universe like never before. That black hole that they say is creaming in this way, they're saying it's changing the angle this way. They're saying it's the biggest one in the universe. Now my supposition is this. This ball is sending such a message of disgrace across the universe. They've got the biggest black hole on board for the simple reason, as a planet enters a black hole, it starts to disintegrate. The front part of it, as it goes through, is out the back side of the black hole before the end of the planet. And it just gets ripped apart as it goes through. The reason that the biggest one is here, because the alien megastructure is quickly going to come inbound, and it's going to take this ball through the black hole intact. The reason being, this ball is a place of beauty, but the life forms on it in human form are not. So you may have a behind the sun interest which initiates a global reset before the ball is mothballed and taken through the black hole. Conjecture, eh? Why do you think the Large Hadron Collider is up running day and night, 24 hours a day? Why do you think there are other worldlies here that are letting themselves be known both benevolent and arrogant? I myself have had visions, visits by other worldlies, and they're akin to how Putin explained them to be. Fast, lithe, energetic, fast. I'm broken enough from witnessing the kids of Kurdistan and beyond. And now they're stopping me from seeing my children in such a way. And they're losing integrity for how I read society. And that's just it. While the media is controlled the way it is and information is controlled the way it is, you have to understand what's going on by having the skill to interpret society by admissions of guilt by individuals and agencies. Well, they might not turn around and come out straight away and say, we fear the veterans because they've got the skills to fight back for what we're about to implement. They won't say that outright, so you have to look about it another way. Why are they targeting veterans? Why are they using the guise of a banner to come down on people that served in faith? You can't get a clear-cut answer from those in authority. They never admit when they made a mistake. They use clever psychology. They make a mistake and it becomes out in the public arena. They say, moving forward. That's a nice positive word, that. Moving forward. It means you're moving forward without dwelling on the fact that they fucked up good and proper. It's the same language in psychobabble that says, what would you like us to do with the product of conception? It's the same language that has you, under the impression that they are elite and far superior than you. But it's not, because what they're doing in essence is they're giving a very distinct ripple of disgust and disgrace to the universe in the very, very primitive synopsis that they think they're better than fellow humanoids. Mere fact they want to practice objectivity to the point it makes them look and sound really, really, really intelligent, so they can look down on others and declare themselves an authority, is in actually fact a primitive fucking stance upon the universe. Now you have Dolly the sheep cloned 20 years ago, and now they say they can do that outside of the womb in a bag. And they've also said they can clone the primate, closest relative to mankind. So when they start taking your children, you start seeing numbers of them pop up, you'll know why. But they hate the messenger who's kind of letting you in on all of this. And so they turn around and use those children that they say they care about. They're using those children to gag that person up. Now they're saying that they have the children's interests at heart, yeah? The child protection laws were invented by Thatcher. Late 70s, early 80s. It just so happens that child suicide rates have increased since, while they've been demonising dads and denying them access to their children. And those teenagers grown now have got their heads in mobile phones, and you see pictures of gangs of them, teenagers, heads in mobile phones. And they're placed on social media sites and we're openly encouraged to take the piss out of them. And they're there perhaps waiting for a message from dad. Social services are aware of all of this, but they would rather cover up the statistics of child suicide. In the West Country alone, 18 children killed themselves in a pact of 20 odd children. 18 of them succeeded before they got to the remaining 3 or 4 and rescued them that were left from this pact. So now you have packs of children getting together and discussing suicide outside of the parents' earshot. And social services don't want you to know that. They don't want you to know the increase in child suicide. And I myself, a child empath in many ways, because of the fact I've never had a child. I've never had a childhood, And part of me is always there, understanding that, knows that Wyatt Sahara will one day entertain thoughts of suicide because of what's happened to them already. Both of them have had problems with their genitals. Wyatt's had to have an operation on his. Sahara's been sat in the toilet with tears coming out of her eyes because her tubes are too small. So as she releases the urine from her bladder, it's backed up against the tube. Can't come out fast enough because the tube's underdeveloped. So she's sat there on the toilet as she releases her bladder in pain and stinging. And I know all of this. And they're trying to shut me up about it. And more children, this is happening to around the world. And social services say they've got the interest of the child at heart. They haven't. They're denying Wyatt and Sahara a good dad, just as they're denying Lungi a good husband, and denying Michael, me, a good wife and my children. And we may not be everybody's cup of tea. I can be outspoken. I can be, you know, my delivery you might find a bit, oh, isn't he a bit rough? And on that point, all I can say is you have two groups that have sat in bed with government for child issues, or been battling government for child recognition, so that the fathers can see their children. One is called Fathers for Justice. Everyone's heard of them. Spider-Man, Superman, Batman climbing buildings, purple dye thrown at Blair. And you have many women who are ex-partners of those of Fathers for Justice saying, go for it. And then you have the other group, Families Need Fathers. Everyone knows Fathers for Justice in their direct action and their broad and brusque manner. How many have actually heard of Families Need Fathers who sit there around the table and say, well, we'd like recognition to be able to see our children. And they go, oh, we'll look into that, and send them on the way, laughing. There's a reason I gob off the way I do. One, I've been brutalised from very early on. Two, you're never going to wake up if you want to sit there all nice and polite and not negotiate all this. Because they're taking the children away from decent mums and dads. You still have men and women here in this world that have got a lot of respect for one another, that still admire the difference and worship each other. And they're all being played off to fight a gender war. Now these gender wars are ending up ruining it for even the homosexuals and lesbian people who are of decency and don't have any hidden agenda. But now factions are being drawn up. Lesbians matter, homosexuals matter, black lives matter, white lives matter, straight lives matter, communists matter, capitalists matter, etc, etc. And all point the fingers at each other while the kids are walking under the arms with nooses around their neck. Not so long back there was an 8-year-old found dangling from his bunk bed by rope. Killed himself, one of the youngest to do it. Found hanging from his bed by rope. If you don't wake up, you're going to lose this ball. The alien megastructure is going to be inbound. You're going to have the global reset. You're all going to be killed off. There'll be no discrimination between good and bad. It'll just be indiscriminate, the whole fucking lot will go. One for those that implemented the bullshit, and two for the decent ones letting it fucking happen. You're going to lose the fucking lot. And to further compound how bad it's become with their snide, I've read a headline recently that said a couple in a relationship of the opposite sex were blah 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 blah. Now what that's designed to do is get you to think, of the opposite sex, that's interesting, does that still go on? That's strange, isn't it? A couple of the opposite sex in a relationship. And this is how it's all cleverly worded. It's all cleverly worded. It's like me turning around and saying, do you know there are aliens that walk amongst us from off-world who are taking the piss out of us? And you might be in a group, I might be in a group saying that, and you'll get one person up turn around and say, you know what, Michael, you could be right. You could be right. So they're giving a positive affirmation of what you're saying, while at the same time they're provoking seeds of doubt in those around you by the word could. Now the INT service is aware of all of this, and they're split too. Nobody knows who to trust anymore. I have former colleagues who work for GCHQ and MI5, all the rest of it, and they must be thinking what the bloody hell's going on as well. Especially when their oppos themselves are turned up dead from suicide, apparently. Suicide in duffel bags. Now you have to wake up, world, as the humanoids upon this ball from wherever, if they're of decency, they're being taken the piss out of. You're going to lose a lot. A whole lot is going to go. Social services have lost their integrity here. They already lost it down in Manchester way back. The police are losing their integrity. What they become is personal henchmen for the elite. You know, the police were started by Robert Peel. from Bury. And the original police were called the Peelers. It's interesting that the headmistress at Gargrave School was called Mrs. Peel. While the children are suffering from ill health from those conditions that they've been given. Now Jess Marquardt, who I contacted to complain from the Complaints Department of North Yorkshire County Council, didn't return calls or email, and she's been up here in Elgin, the borough of Moray, watching me and Lungy and my children. And it's funny she's called Marquardt, because these spots all over Wyatt's body, they're scars. There is a romantic opinion that that's going to stop the otherworldlies doppelganging you. But from behind their son, they've let me know they love scars. She's been up here when me and Lungy were at the local park, just gaining a bit of respite and saying hello to each other, because the love is still there. There's an 8-foot maggot turned up, possibly because he's got the integrity of a maggot. And while we're sat there at the edge of a lake with all the birds looking at us and congregating around us, this 8-foot maggot stomps in, thinking he's the big I am, the local don of this region, this perhaps ball. And he shoos all the birds away and then operates a Men in Black technology where all of a sudden hypnosis is recalled, and myself and Lungy find ourselves split from being sat on the park bench with each other's head on each other's shoulders after the fight, after the sentencing by court. He comes in with the integrity of a maggot and splits up just a simple moment of affection. And you're all there laughing like hell, because when he did that, right there behind me and Lungy was Jess Marquardt getting out of the car smiling embarrassedly, because she didn't have the courage to turn on and tell him what a dick he is. And you're all complicit in this. You're all complicit in it. And I'm warning you, you're going to lose the whole lot. And while this goes on and you're happy in your ignorance, you don't deserve to procreate. You don't deserve your children. You most certainly don't deserve this world of beauty. And being frankly honest, you don't deserve your own place in the universe. You're going to lose the lot. The whole lot. I don't have a lot made. A little bit of material wealth, music making equipment. I'm not everyone's cup of tea. Me and Lungy sometimes have made erotic films of bondage. And that's because we can't make love every now and then because of the conditions we have. If she's in pain, I can't keep an erection. Those that eavesdrop into the house know that. That pisses them off, that. They actually would want me to be such a brute that while she's in agony I keep going and it fuels my sexual arousal. I can't do that. And that goes against their profiling, you see, because they want to say I'm a rapist or this, that and that, and I'm not. They know it. I know it. Lungy knows it. And they're very keen to destroy me. I've give you plenty of warnings and tried to wake you up. I'm not everyone's cup of tea. I'm sorry about that. Some people say I'm grandiose and I'm not. I don't have any status, power and wealth. Grandiose for me is somebody that is paying the British soldier's wage and also arming his enemy with the British taxpayers' money. Grandiose to me is a general who doesn't give a shit about these lads and lasses from the poorest of communities that step up to the mark to be a someone and give a little bit. Well, those generals who want to put them into unnecessary positions so they have to fight for their lives with cameras on helmets. That's grandiose. Sorry, my delivery is a bit abrupt. As I said, I'm not everyone's cup of tea. I tell you what though, if you really think I'm that bad, you can see the global poles shifting now. They're hinting at it at the moment. They could actually change the poles very quickly. 30 metres a year currently, they could do it overnight if they wanted to. That's the precursor for a reversal. If they do the reversal, we'll have a It's a Wonderful Life scenario. I'll be James Stewart, yeah? And you can turn on and make sure I'm not born. And go back to 1966 and make sure I'm not around. So if they're going to do that, I'm sorry for that. I obviously didn't mean fuck all to you anyway by the way you think of me. Especially when you think I'm not good enough to be with my children. So let's say we go back to 1966 and I'm not born. I'm sorry, Simon, I won't be there to stop you putting poo in your mouth as we're sat around the yellow potty at 2 Mortimer Avenue waiting to be tended in the morning. I won't be able to stop you drinking the urine either from the potty. I'm sorry, Susan, I won't be there to stop you putting your hand over your buttocks, which made you get one more and one more and one more. I'm sorry, Susan, I won't be there as a 12-year-old boy whose neck couldn't fit the collar of the shirt he bought with his paper round money in the jumble sale at the back, stood at the bottom of the stairs as you're shouting from murder. You're not shouting and screaming from pain of being hit. That's the guttural tone of fear from being murdered by your dad, David Robinson. I won't be there at the bottom of the stairs shouting at him to stop, full of fear. I'm sorry about that. And he did it to you too, Jackie, and again I won't be there at the bottom of the stairs shouting at him to stop. In February 1990 I gave first aid to an RTA down in Blandford. I did see her 5 weeks later. I didn't let on to her, but she recovered and she was happy and smiling. I won't be there to have my hand down your mouth stopping you from swallowing your tongue while your internal injuries were hemorrhaging blood all over my hands, waiting for a good 20 minutes for the ambulance to turn up. I won't be there, okay? I hope someone from the area will give you first aid to ensure you survive. I won't be there, Carl, to stop your car severing your hand as the jack to prop up your wheel so you can change it buckles and you try and keep the car held up with your hand. I won't be there to pull it away as it creams in on your hand, okay? I also won't be there for the birth of Fabian. I won't be there for the birth of Wyatt and Sahara, and they won't be here either, neither will Fabian. And it means that my wife Lungi may die as well, because the condition that she had wouldn't be flagged because I wouldn't be there to signpost her to seek medical assistance. It also means that there'll be a position open at Mortimer Avenue for my mother to give abuse to a male, and that may go over to you, Simon. It also means there'll be a position available at Darnell School for Mrs. McClure to abuse someone, to get the fucking head kicked in every day from the fellow pupils after she does so. There'll also be a position open in the military to go out and spend your time not on camps of decency where there's bars and clubs and all that. There'll be a position open for a soldier there to go and perhaps look at poo monsters when he's off shift. To spend their time in the shitholes, not the decent places. There'll be a position there open for somebody to be accused of things he hasn't done by the commanding officer of said regiment. It means there'll be a position open for Alien TV to take the piss out of as he goes to school with masking tape around his feet. There'll be a position open there for the police to abuse someone of decency because they're of decency. There'll be a position there for social services to target and abuse. There'll be a position there open, now covered up, of a boy on a bed surrounded by 11 doctors watching him while playing with their things in their pants. You think this is all conjecture and circumspect? Moorfield Adoption Society had its records burned in Liverpool. Boothall Hospital, one of my earliest memories of feeling gas upon my face when there was no one in the room, has been demolished. Crossley Primary in Blakely has had a fire, records gone. Darnell Primary has been demolished. I wonder what they've done to the records besides scroll over them. He wants to rape women, which is not right. I wonder what records have happened or what's happened to the records from the NHS in Yorkshire. I wonder if, like in Manchester, they've gone missing from the car being robbed. Because Dr. McGose's car was robbed 6 months after me and Lungi left the borough of Rochdale. Funnily enough, my records were in that car. Cover-ups. It also means there'll be a position available up here for a young family to be abused, be split apart and have their children taken off them. You want that James Stewart scenario. I'm happy not to be here for what you think of me now. I really am. I've seen discs up above. They'll have gone back in time now, and they'll come back in tears for some of the things I've been through. Some of the things I don't even talk to you about. You think that much of me, I'm happy to die any time you bloody want. And I'm happy never to come back. Now you're all there championing whatever bloody religion you think is one that works for you. So if you're good, you're going to go to heaven. Well, let's say you're there in heaven or paradise. You're there and you're saying, thanks for letting me in, St. Peter. I'm surprised the gates are still up. I thought they'd been weighed in by a monk by now, but thanks for letting me in, St. Peter. I can now relax. I've done my time on earth. And you'll all be there in heaven sporting such concern. And down on this ball, everyone will still be in states of purgatory, and you're okay with that. Well, there you are, you don't understand soldiers at all. I came back from the Middle East and the Balkans, and my heart's still there with the Oppos because I know what they're going through on a day-to-day basis. You're all in Civilian Street having a right good laugh at it all and a beer and all that. And that's what it'll be like for the benevolent people upon this ball. They go to paradise, they're still going to be there in hell because they'll know upon this ball people are suffering unnecessarily. So take your religion and your prejudice against me and Lungi and our children. Take your bogus allegations that prop up belief in yourself, reasons to live. Ram the lot. Ram it. Ram it. For what you're expressing to the universe now, you will lose this ball of wonder. And the decent men and women who have no problem with each other, be they straight or gay, say bye-bye to. As long as you propagate your own agenda and not work for each other, is as long as the black hole will be raining in towards us, and the alien megastructure ready to surround this ball and take it through, as the dark matter closes in to secure and silence this region of the universe for a while, to get your contamination out of it. And as for using children as shields, if the suicide rate in children is rising, you can kiss that thought well and truly away. The decent men and women, despite gender issues, or despite your gender issues that don't have a problem with each other, you don't want to acknowledge that. They're a threat to you. A couple in a relationship of opposite sex. It's funny how we are engineered to be able to procreate with one another if you are man and woman, and now they're doing the damnedest to make that seem strange. There are now nations revoking the laws of liberalism upon homosexuality and lesbianism and turn it back to square one. Again, your attitude of hidden agendas is going to bring back murder, homo bashing, all the rest of it. And worse than that, it's going to bring back heterosexual bashing, black man bashing, white woman bashing, white man bashing, black woman bashing. Everyone up in arms, pointing fingers at each other, while the kids are killing themselves, and you're all there encouraged to take the piss out of the kids as they do it. If this is what you call advanced, top of the tree in intellectual capability, I don't want to be part of it. I'm happy to die. I've had enough. 5 decades of abuse I've had. So we're playing the It's a Wonderful Life scenario, yeah? I won't be around to give the warnings. And it's strange, you know, because of the class society we have, they wouldn't listen anyway. Who'd want to listen to the warnings of a boy everyone laughed at for going to school with masking tape around his shoes, where they ensured he didn't have a degree, where they don't like his poetry because it's too articulate to be lower working class? Or the irony if you decide to dismiss the warnings. Bit poetic, isn't it? Like that poetry you like from the soldiers that are dead.